Everyone, I'm Daria and welcome back to another episode of Decomposing. So today on the show, we're going to tackle a maybe less analytical type of subject or question, but one that I would encourage you to leave thinking about. Who knows, you might have the next big idea when it comes to the progression of audio consumption. So what am I alluding to? Today, I wanted to take a minute to discuss how we find music. This might seem like a blunt question with obvious answers at first, but in the grand scheme of music distribution, you might realize quickly how relevant of a question this is. Considering the ways we consume music and come across new music are very recent innovations in history. Not only is this a subject of relevance in reference to the overall existence of music, but the ways in which it's changed so drastically are really credited to a very short span of time. So where do we start? Well, way back in the 1400s. No, you didn't just ring up your neighbor or something to ask them for a copy of the most recent classical piece. No, not even one that you would have to physically play yourself. Sheet music first arrived on the scene at this time, being the first physical distribution of music. And, well, the only distribution of music, because if it wasn't physical, well, what did we have left? Digital? And you and me both know that was not around or even close to up and coming. Well, if you loved music way back when, you were a little bit out of luck because there was such little ability to find new music or stay on top of the music scene, unless you had constant access to concerts or, well, maybe your friend was a composer, but that may have been about it. It took all the way until the 1890s when the phonograph was able to produce physical, shareable music. But still, the music was on brittle, scratchy shellac material, and as a new innovation, probably either very hard to come by or very expensive, perhaps. What were music fans to do? It makes you feel a little privileged now in modern day, doesn't it? It took all the way until the 1930s to actually have somewhat common, more durable vinyl records. And of course, this is when we see the burst of more accessible, varying, and vast expressions of music. I mean, think about how many genres we swept through throughout the course of the 1900s. It almost seems like all music was invented then sometimes, because of this. And, well, this was certainly due to the higher access and higher physical demand for music. You could be a functional and habitual music fan a lot easier than you could way back when. During the 1900s, we landed at the kind of vinyl boom, 50s, 60s, 70s, and once again, the hunt for music becomes a popular pastime. Now there's dedicated fans, a full functioning business on music consumption. Well, the way finding music socially has changed since then enormously. Back then, music was found through a wide variety of things, some still existing, some almost non-existent. Some examples included hangouts with friends and parties where you'd sit around and swap vinyl records. Record stores where music was easily organized and accessible not only by things like alphabetical order, but by new releases. If you were inclined to keep up with the booming music scene, it was instantly possible. Then also by attending concerts and seeing new bands open up for your favorite acts. And this followed into the 80s and 90s with the addition of musical magazines, which featured concert ads, new band features, and even promotion of bands' new material. Sometimes in the form of a promotional poster, sometimes physical music was actually dispersed along with copies of the magazines. With the additions of other modernized digital music, like cassettes, CDs, 8-tracks, you pretty much found music a similar way all around, despite the format changes. The next big way to find music was when we entered the digital era. Can you believe how brief all this history is, considering the entire timeline of existence? Pretty recent. Well, in the mid-90s, computers and the internet hit the scene, and we pretty much know what happens after that. Probably the majority of us living through that transition. In terms of the biggest change in music distribution history, MNS.com states in reference to this time period, it's estimated that worldwide revenues for recorded music fell by 50% between 1999 and 2009, which would force the industry to adapt in ways it had never previously imagined. Now artists distribute their music on personal websites, the formation of music sales platforms go digital, and instead of physical record stores, you can go to online shops and applications that have similarly organized catalogs available at the click of a button or the tap of your fingertip. Along with these, there become websites that house audio particularly, and you can find music through these catalogs that date back to decades ago, and brand new releases. Bigger changes come with sites like YouTube in 2005, where not only is music readily available, but there are forums, comments, and algorithmic recommendations that can introduce you to new and old forms of music. This is important because not only are you now able to do your own hunting for music, but now you have new sources able to introduce you to this content at a similar leisure. This would be one of the most current innovations with modern technology and the addition of streaming services and social media. With all of these old methods piling up, like word of mouth from friends, attending concerts, visiting stores, magazines, online apps and websites, and now streaming services which use algorithms to recommend you music, create playlists dedicated to sounds you often select, allow users to do the same and generate playlists for you to explore, and even the inclusion of artists on social media, where you can hear what they're listening to, who they were inspired by, and their own outputs. There has never been so many different ways to access music like there is today. The majority of the population, of course, keep up with the most recent, technologically innovative ways, leaving some of the less traditional behind, just because they are more accessible and more instant. However, you might notice that some of these methods have also made comebacks. For example, there was a vinyl boom rebirth in the 2010s, where after album pressing became very sparse and out of demand, much due to the aesthetic purposes of record players and sound systems, artists and consumers once again took part of the physical pressing method. In certain countries, the music festival life is a huge societal and cultural scene, and this is where new music is discovered and elevated. We're kind of spoiled when it comes to being music fans today, having all the easiest ways to keep up with and enjoy all music genres and time periods, and the ability to choose from all these varieties in how we find and enjoy consuming music. It's almost inevitable that this progression, while keeps advancing, there is probably a new method out there waiting to be discovered, or even in the process, which will allow us even more ways to consume music or heighten its accessibility. So to end the show today, I want to leave you to think about some questions regarding music distribution. What is the main way you consume music currently in modern times, and how did you get introduced to it? Have you ever taken part in some of these old methods of finding music? We've discussed how some of these methods have stayed present or even experienced a rebirth in contemporary music distribution. Do you think any of these retro ways could make a monumental comeback? Can you think of any potential ideas that would aid the progress of music distribution? Thanks for joining me. This has been Decomposing with me, Daria Lawson. To hear more episodes of the show and other podcasts on the Arrow Podcast Network, visit southeastarrow.com/multimedia.